Hi, so today is not as much of a happy one as last time. I'm going to be chatting about something today that's really important to me. It's something that I don't know why, but have been kind of hesitant to talk about. I think it's because it's so important to me that I have not wanted to share it just because it means a lot, which is really counterintuitive for me. Usually if things are important to me, I chat about them right away. But this one talks about a lot of things that I have not shared with a lot of people that I know. So I just haven't talked about it. That was really vague. I'm sorry. So anyway, I'm going to be sharing about the blank monologues, which I participated in 3 years ago, which is timely why I'm sharing about it now. 3 years ago, I was still at the University of Washington working on my undergrad. So during this time, 3 years ago, I was still doing rehearsals for it. The blank monologues, if you're unaware, is something that the University of Washington does around Valentine's Day every year. It is a student-written, student-performed production that was previously known as the Vagina Monologues. They changed the name to be more inclusive. The stories can really be about anything, but the blank monologues that I went to before I performed in it and the one that I was in were stories that were about resilience, identity, survival, basically ranging from themes about those kinds of things. And it's meant to be a space about inclusivity, safety, those kinds of ideas. And it's really interesting to me that they do it during Valentine's Day weekend usually. It's really important to me because that holiday is one that has a lot of memories that are associated with sadness and pain. So I was able to rewrite that with memories of community and survival and happiness even, actually. So I'm really thankful for that. Some backstory about that. I applied for the blank monologues kind of as a last-ditch effort to find a home in a space where I didn't really have one. I moved to the UW to kind of start out on my own and kind of move away and gain some autonomy, some freedom, have a place that didn't have any memories of anything actually. And when I started off there, I did have a community, but I wasn't in a healthy enough mental health space to make it as good as it should have been for me. So it wasn't as good as it could have been, essentially. And I regret not applying for the blank monologues earlier, because when I started the blank monologues, I was not in a good space. I was already getting ready to transfer out and move away from Seattle and come back to Portland. And what the blank monologues did for me was show me my people in that space. I had already been volunteering and interning for a community of people that were showing me my niche in this space. But the blank monologues showed me my home in not only a university that was massive and I loved, and a Seattle, which is a city that was huge and massive, which I loved, but I hadn't found really where I belonged yet. And what this did was it showed me where I belonged. And that was so valuable and so important, and something that I really hadn't found yet as an adult. So what I did with this monologue was shared something that two people knew in the world. And I have no idea how I had the strength to do that. It's baffling to me that oh my God, how old was I then? 19? Was that right? 3 years ago? Yeah, my 19-year-old self had the gusto to make a monologue that was 10 minutes long, sharing about experiences that I had basically never told the world, save two people that I trusted more than anyone else in this whole world. I was discussing topics that were so raw and that hurt so much and that I really hadn't processed yet. I had told people about what was going on out of necessity. And here I was in rehearsals and then for 3 nights discussing them in front of strangers and then in front of 3 loved ones who traveled up to come watch me perform, and in front of friends who came up to see, who were from the community who came to see it. This event was one of the most important events of my entire life. It was supposed to be filmed and posted on YouTube for the UW community to see, and it never was. But what I ended up doing was, because I'm an auditory learner, I recorded myself reading my monologue so that I could listen to it while I walked to and from class the weeks prior, so I could memorize the pauses that I wanted to take and how I emphasized things. And I still have that. So what I'm going to do is play that now, because I want to keep that. And that's my voice from 3 years ago. And it's an important message for me now to hear how brave that was. And remember that if I had the courage then to talk about things that I didn't have the strength, I didn't think I had the strength to discuss, that I have so much potential. And I hope that you know that about yourself too. So this is raw, just so you know. And I'll put some trigger and content warnings in the description below. I don't know if enjoy is the proper word, but I hope that you get something out of it. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Surname of Silence. My family likes to believe it is the epicenter of empowered, indestructible women. That my great-great-grandmother began the tradition of passing down to the abundance of women in our family line that you can be as loud or as quiet as you like, but no one will ever silence your voice. And sure, from their perspective, it's proven true. This family has raised loud, outspoken, feisty women who have tackled obstacles and come out of it scathed, but still breathing. They're survivors of their own stories, but there is a fundamental issue that dissolves this deceiving command post of power. They silence themselves. My family likes to think that it is a communicative one, but what they see as close-knit and loving is simply sweeping the secrets far under the rug of our family's history, and refusing to recognize that the youngest children trip over the bumps, that the eldest cough from the dust of secrets invading their lungs. They like to ignore that one of my aunts went from shelter to shelter seeking help from her abusive relationship. They prefer to pretend that she was becoming a poor example for the family by not settling down and never having the same phone number. When her party lifestyle changed into alcoholism in order to cope with her life of abuse, they choose to believe that she was becoming a burden on the family, that we should try to keep her out of our lives. The women in my life like to ignore that they too carry scars of living in abusive childhood homes. That after enough years in confusion and fear as they watch the abuse happen to their loved ones, the path of finding unhealthy and abusive relationships was the only track offered to them. They prefer to ignore the sheer existence of the path itself, and that its complementary gifts of eating, drinking, and mental health disorders last longer than any relationship that they've ever had. The women in my life like to sweep their scars and well-stamped passports from this never-ending trek along the path of abuse far under the rug of our family's history, refusing to acknowledge to each other and to their children that this abuse is generational, that we have yet to find our abuse-free destination. Johnson, the second most common last name in the U.S., and here it is carrying along its pride of pain, its message of flashbacks and unhealing wounds. And when I found out that each member of my family had been in an abusive and unhealthy situation in their lives, I wanted to rip my last name from my identity, to shed this prophecy of the uncontrolled, of the destined to be true. I wanted to be free from whatever toxic curse was weaving between my generations, of being connected to a family that would refuse to discuss what we all shared. I found myself in a situation of silence, of judgment rather than community and safety, and my gut reaction was to abandon my name, my family, everything that pointed me in the direction of the inevitable. These genetic traits are pushing me towards a destiny that I don't want, that I would do anything to break free from. How do I live knowing that I am so close to the brink of repeating what has come before me, of living up to the fate that's within my own name? How can I remain in a family that doesn't want to acknowledge that each one of us share experiences of abuse? Of each member in my family having a relationship that ended in divorce due to the toxic combination of years of internalized abuse, and finding partners who repeated the abusive traits these women had been seeing since their youth. How can I stay attached to a family name that prefers to ignore that one of my earliest memories is hiding in a closet, shaking and crying, knowing that my parents were screaming at each other outside? How can I continue sitting and smiling at holiday dinners, knowing that my family would rather shuffle through the same list of bland conversation topics than discuss the undeniable truths awaiting us in the lumpy and ragged carpet hidden just below the surfaces of our discussions? Why was everyone but me oblivious to the obvious? That our familial mental health disorders and patterns of addiction carry through our genetics more than our olive skin and dark hair. Why is it that if I stood up at one of these sacred dinners and screamed my lungs out, my elders would simply ask if I was practicing on one of my school projects? But if I mildly asked about the common thread of abuse that we all share, I would be silenced immediately and be admonished for my inquiry of something that isn't there. No one likes to remember that, at a very young age, I hid in my room as I frantically dialed my mom's number while she was at her second job, biting back tears to remain in a whisper in order to tell her that my babysitter, my cousin, was being yelled and screamed and threatened at by her boyfriend in the living room. No one wants to talk about the time that my mom came home drunk, ready to pick a fight, and after an hour of her unprompted and relentless screaming at me about how I was just too nice and that I needed to toughen up so I wouldn't always get my heart broken. That if I would just stand up for myself when people bullied me, I wouldn't always be coming home to her crying. After an hour of that, when I finally broke down and tears did begin to fall onto my face, she got even more upset, threw her credit card at me, and left, saying, "Have a good life." I didn't find out until I came to college what the definition of consent was. That contrary to the unspoken knowledge to women that I had been raised with, people aren't supposed to do anything to you without you enthusiastically saying yes. I didn't know until I was a legal adult that all those times that boys thought it would be okay to touch me just because I was wearing something that highlighted my cute butt or my big breasts was not okay. I didn't realize until I joined Sarva that, contrary to the knowledge I had received in school growing up, there isn't one abusive experience that is more valid than the others. And just because I haven't reached the top of this artificial hierarchy of abuse, and that I don't have any physical scars to show a timeline of my life within this rape culture, my experiences are no less valid, whatever they may be. I didn't realize until I was able to leave my home that I had been emotionally and psychologically abused since I was a child, and that I had been left with an anxiety disorder as an indefinite reminder of all the shit I went through as a child that no one in my family even knows about. Each time that a voice raises in volume or emotion, my hands begin to tremble, my heart races, and I feel the urge of my trichotillomania rising up, beckoning me to rip out my hair, to put myself into physical pain along with the emotional flashbacks of my abusive experiences. You know, I can never tell my family the real cause of my anxiety, the true reason that I began going to therapy. They think that I'm just a real worrier, and I've let them believe it, silencing my own issues in order to protect myself from their judgment, sweeping my own secrets under the rug of our family's history in order to ignore their own painful gaze. I didn't understand why the passion for speaking out about domestic violence and sexual assault was something I not only wanted, but needed, until slowly, one midnight revelation after the next, one family gathering after another, I realized that this knowledge had been around me since birth, but no one in my family had bothered to even explain it to me. What I should have been taught by my family at a young age is that we are a family unit of survivors, a generational line that is still dealing with their scars, but that we have a safe enough space to discuss these emotions. Not sweep their silent secrets under the rug until they creep out the other side, not ignore our emotions, our pain, our fear, and use that against other women in our family dealing with similar issues. I should have been raised in a family space where these issues were recognized and allowed to be dealt with, to be able to be healed from. But I didn't. And neither did my mother, my aunts, my cousins, or my grandmothers. But I am breaking this cycle because my fight is bigger than my fear. I'm throwing back the rug and letting all the hidden memories spill out. I'm stopping the pattern for myself and for the ones of future generations. I am becoming the master of my own genetics, shaping and reshaping my destiny and the patterns of the ones who are coming after me to end the cycle. I recognize that I'm still dealing with my abuse, with my scars, but I will no longer allow the silence to further my pain, to further halt my healing. I still need enough time to understand these issues, to accept them, and move forward as best as possible, but I will no longer be lured into the silence of hiding what I am feeling. Because I am more than a surname of silence. I am more than what my family and I have survived. I do not have to stop the name, but I can stop the shame and allow myself to be the catalyst for change. That moving forward in my life as an adult and as a parent, I will foster the safe spaces for questions and education, encourage healthy relationships, give support in my communities if asked to, and respect if it's not wanted. That I will do better than those who have come before me, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't have the tools to do so. So I'm taking back my name, altering its definition. No longer does Alexandria Johnson mean survivor of abuse, bearer of the inevitable. No, not anymore. No, I'm redefining myself. From here on out, my family, my communities, and the reflection in the mirror will know me as Alexandria Johnson, treasurer of support, eliminator of stigma, and a daughter, niece, and a granddaughter who will no longer stay silent.